This tutorial is part 2 in fixing common problems in astrophotographs. As in part 1, I like to begin by using an analogy to golf. Here's a difficult shot around a tree. Here's another difficult shot over a very high wall in a bunker in front of the green. In golf, your score depends upon how well you get out of trouble because no one's game is perfect. In image processing, a good result depends upon how you clean up problems because no one's data are perfect. Fixing problems. Here are the topics. In the previous tutorial on fixing problems, we covered background color noise, halo reduction, and oblong stars. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about fixing gradients, making your stars smaller, and repairing stars if they're not perfectly round.
Gradient removal. If you live in the city or in the suburbs like I do, gradients are pretty much guaranteed. You're going to get it from your light pollution, from a nearby street lamp, or just from the glow of the city. So let's go back to our NGC 6946 that we worked on before, and we're going to use a wonderful tool, most efficient tool that Russ Croman developed. RC is Russ Croman at rcastro.com. It's called Gradient Exterminator. It's a $50 download. It's a plug-in to Photoshop, so you just load it in as a plug-in and pull it up when you need it. So what you do is you duplicate a layer again, use the magic wand and click in the background, and you select the background. Let's say there are some areas that haven't been selected, so you hit the Shift key and use the same tool and click in there, and that selects that. Then you go to the lasso tool and you hit the Alt key in the lasso and you draw around your galaxy. You do not want the gradient tool to work, let's say, on these fine spiral arms or any nebulosity around your object. You want to exclude that from the calculations, but you want everything else done. So once that's done, you're ready to go. It's going to analyze all of this background and all the fluctuations in the background that you've selected. We go under Filter. RC Astro is where the plugin is going to be in Gradient Exterminator. I like to use Fine and High, and in this case, since we have a color image, we want it to balance the color background. We want to make the background neutral after we remove the gradient. It thinks a while and does it. So you hit Control D to remove your selections. Now, did we really improve it or not? Sometimes these gradients are subtle unless you go back and compare it to what you started with. Here's what we started with. Here's what we ended up with. So that's significant. So Gradient Exterminator works wonderfully. One of the biggest things that people try to work with is making stars smaller. Having large stars on a nebula or having large stars in a galaxy really adds optical clutter. It takes the eye away from the object we want our viewers to look at, and you start staring at the stars. So one of the things we always try to do is make our stars smaller at the end of processing. And there are a couple of ways to do it. Here's a zoom in of NGC 6946 that we've been working on in previous tutorials. We can use a liquefy filter. And what we're really trying to do is say that most of these small stars in the background are not the things that distract us. It's these few, maybe half a dozen to a dozen large stars. The liquefy tool is a relatively recent one in Photoshop, I believe 4 and 5. Liquefy creates a bullet there, and you just go to the various stars and you click on them. And that's how easy it is, and then you click OK. And when you compare them, we're going back and forth. You can see. Take a look at these stars, take a look at these two stars when we go back and forth. And that just makes the image look a little bit better because you've taken the focus away from the large stars. They're there, but now the focus is more on the galaxy. We introduced Noel Carboni's astronomy tools before. There is a tool in Carboni's action items to reduce the stars. And you can see it here. I'm going back and forth. They don't do a huge job on the large stars. You can still use liquefy for that, but they do make the smaller stars a little bit smaller. So you can actually do a combination of this Carboni tool to make the smaller stars smaller and use the liquefy filter to work on the large ones. There's one other one, but it's an older tool. It's called the pinch tool. And the problem with this tool is until liquefy came along, we had to do everything in 8-bit. So we would have to save our 16-bit file into an 8-bit file and then use this pinch function to shrink stars. Now the liquefy filter is here and we don't need to do that. But I want to show you that for those of you who have CS3 or older Photoshops, how you can use this tool in 8-bit mode. So you go under Image, Mode, you change it from 16-bit to 8-bit, you circle the star that you want to shrink, you go under Filter, Distort, Pinch. You generally use about 50% there. You see this central region is pinched down. You click OK. So that shows what you can do with the pinch filter. It works just as effectively as the liquefy filter, except you have to do this in 8-bit mode, and you can't take the advantage of doing it in 16-bit mode and then saving that high-resolution 16-bit file for printing of a larger image later on. And probably the most well-known filter or procedure for shrinking stars is the minimum filter. It is the filter I like the least. The way you can do that is to select the stars by going into color range under select. Click on highlights here. That's going to select most of your stars. See, most of the stars have the marching ants around them. They're selected. You increase the size, let's say, by 6 pixels. You feather that by 3 so the edges aren't affected so much. Then you go under Filter, Other, Minimum. You never choose more than 1 pixel here. You click OK, and oftentimes what the minimum filter does, since it only moves in on 4 corners, it pinches the star into a diamond shape. And you can see this in a lot of images where people have tried to use it. So what oftentimes you do is you use the minimum filter, then you immediately go to the Fade tool under Edit, Fade the filter, and you maybe fade it to 64% of the full value, and try and work with that. But you will always see a little distortion of the star if you use the minimum filter, and that's why these other tools are a little bit better. Star repair. Let's say we had a little glitch here. There's a bump in the scope and you have this little appendage here. What do you do to get rid of it? Well, you can circle it, you can copy it and paste it, you can rotate it 180 degrees. You can then change the opacity down to maybe 80% just so you can see where you're going to overlay it, and then you overlay it, you move it, physically move it over the original. Since we know that the original top was good, but this bottom is good here in the rotated image, what we want to do is we just want to erase the top here. So we take the eraser tool and we simply start erasing the top. And when you're done, since you haven't touched the bottom, you've only touched the top, here's where you ended with a nice circular star without that appendage.